You know, this is a bit like the slow food movement, isn't it? This is the slow restoration movement, doing things properly with care and a bit of love. Puts the humanity back into it. And God knows we need a bit of humanity in the world at the moment, don't we? Restoring these old cars can be challenging at times, and you need to give yourself a bit of a break sometimes. Something that you can really get your teeth into isn't too challenging, so you're not overwhelmed by it. Now, there's lots of stuff that you can sort of plough into, say, right, we'll pull the whole thing apart and we'll do this. But sometimes it's them little victories you need just to buoy you up. Now, motivation's reasonably easy for me because I'm getting paid to do this after all, but certainly if you're doing your own cars, it can be really difficult to remain motivated doing this stuff. So that's when it really becomes important. So sometimes it's as simple as, taking a little bracket out the engine bay, cleaning up and painting it, that type of thing, can really help. So with that in mind, I'm doing a little bit of the same. I thought let's tackle something that I can really make something happen with. So we've looked at this, we've got it all straight on the jig, everything's wonderful, and I need to do a bit of work on the back to sort out all that accident damage and so on, and there's corrosion in there, but that is really quite daunting, the back. So I sort of thought, let's look at something else. Let's do something that I can actually fix, feel like we really accomplished something, and, little victory, just to buoy yourself up. And it all needs doing anyway, so you can't. All of it has to be done. So it doesn't matter. So with that in mind, I thought we'd start with this sill area, and it has this strengthener plate on it, which is this one, and that pops on there like that, and you've got the returns on it and so on. So I thought, right, let's start by deconstructing this, and then we can move on from there. So there's work in here, as you can see. Once we've got this behind, it's quite rusty in here. Although we've had it blasted, it's blasted through there, it can't get into these bits. So we'll probably do some work in there. But for now, I just thought, let's make that up. And that'll make us sort of happy, make something up. So I took the original, so deconstructed it. I unfolded these, just to give myself so I can work out my dimensions. And we've got these holes here, which have swages in them, these little dimples. And obviously that would be a hole first, and then it'd have the dimple put into it. It might be done in one go. They might have a big punch thing to do it with. But I just flattened that one back out to give myself an idea of what we're starting with, so I know what size to cut those holes to. And then we've got to look at these dimples, the shape of them. Now, I've got some dimple dies, but I didn't have anything the right size, and certainly I didn't have anything that had the right sort of radius on it, because they're quite sharp, these. So in light of that, I thought, well, we need a dimple die, I'll make one. So here's my dimple die that I made. So I spent yesterday afternoon making that, and you can see the idea of this is it bolts together through here, and as you tighten that up, that would pull through that hole and then create the shape. You can see it sort of does that, pushes in. We'll see it in operation in a minute because I'm going to make some. So yeah, that had to be turned down on the lathe, so I had a bit of stock that I used, and you can see I had to take it out. Now, it didn't have to be that deep. This is deeper than you really need, but I wanted to, that's fairly deep anyway, and in all honesty, the bit of stock I was using had already been got at, so I had to go down a bit. Now, I could have milled it off, I could have taken it down and made it shallow, but anyway, it suits my purposes for that to be that deep, and it's got a gentle start to it, because you're asking quite a bit of this to pull that much metal round, otherwise it will start to split, you see. And you can see that on the originals, they have started to split a little bit in places. So we've got let's find a good one. to prove what I'm trying to say. Yeah, you can see here, you can see there's a little split in there when I put my nail in. So it was starting to tear. Now that might be partly because of the tool they used, you know, was a bit sharp and so on, but I don't want that to happen. So I'm trying to avoid that. And that's another thing with restoration. You've got to decide, certainly if you're remaking things, there's two quandaries here, is how much do we replace and do we re-engineer in potential faults that were done when it was new. So with something like this, so on the outside of this, it looked like we've got a bit of problem. Looks like, oh, we've got a bit of rust here. Thought, well, you know, that was my initial idea. We'll take this off and then I'll just make an end up. Let it in nicely so you can't see it's been done and so on, and then we can refit it. But of course, once we get into it, we sort of see how bad it is. It's all peppered through here and it's, you know, all thin through here down the bottom. And you get to the point where you think, well, there's not a lot of this that's worth salvaging, you know, and it's not that important to you know, so I thought we'll just make a new one. But certainly on some stuff I have, you know, repaired things like this and let them back in. But I think time we've done that, we'd have to let a great big piece in the bottom. It's just not worth mucking about with, you know, we'll make new. Got to make the other side anyway, because that is pretty rough, the other side. So that's that. So here's the first one. That's the first one I made. Did that this morning, and there's our little, you know, presses, and you see they're pretty much the same, aren't they? Well, I say pretty much the same, they're identical. That's the whole point of it, isn't it? To make them the same, them little dimples or swages. Yes, just, you know, do we call them swages or dimples? I don't know. You call the tool a dimple die, but I'd call these swages. But anyway, dimple die is a nice word, isn't it? We'll use that, and we all like dimples. So, especially them dimpled cheeks, don't we? Right, so look, here you go. That's it. So, yeah, all we've got to do is stick that on. But we won't be sticking it on with sticker flex like on that Dino, will we? And a bit of tar, we'll do it properly. But long before this goes on, we've got to address all this. But anyway, we'll have a look at that later. So we'll put that in there. And we can put this one in there, out of the way, and we can start making what we're making. Actually, let's get this back out, because here's another thing. Here's a thing. Now, what was I saying about just then? I was saying about repeating faults as such. So, you know, if you looked at that, you could take all the dimensions off it and so on, and then you're going to need to check the other side to make sure their dimensions, you know, so you know what you're doing. And when you do that, you start to realise that, you know, this isn't sort of pressed out in a factory. This is handmade, like all of this car. So with that in mind, there are little human errors in it. You know, just shows a bit of humanity if there's a little thing wrong with it. It's not pressed out, you know, in one go or stamped on a machine. You know, machines are used and so on. So you take a sort of a bit of both sides. You look at it and see and work out where these folds should be, and they're slightly different side to side. The overall dimensions are much the same. It's only a strengthener, and then the actual outer sill on these is aluminium. It's just a cover, so it doesn't interfere with too much. It's not the end of the world. If it, you know, as I say, it's not it's not perfect, but it doesn't need to be perfect. But what's interesting is these spacings of these. Now you'd assume they'd all be perfectly spaced, which they look like it, but when I measured them, you've got differences. You've got a 95mm between there and there. You've got an 88 between there and there. Can't see what I measured there, but something 8, another 98, I think. Got a 94 there and a 104 there. So it's quite a difference. I mean, you can sort of see that one looks slightly different. And then we've got another 95. So that wasn't all plotted out. That would have been put into a tool. They might have had a tool that punched it and swaged it in one go. So it might have gone through like that. That might have punched the hole and then pushed through to do the swage, and maybe on a sort of big fly press or something. And it probably had it backspace, so they probably, you know, they'd get a bit of steel like this. That would go up against the backstop, and then it just go bang, 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 like that through it. And obviously they eyeballed it, and they had good enough eyes to guess it. That's what I think happened, because I don't think they marked it out and got it that far wrong. But I've marked mine out, So this is what I'm getting at. Do I equalise them and make it perfection, or do I repeat that? Well, I think I repeat that, because I think that's what that's the thing. If you make it too good, it's not really a restoration, is it? We're sort of, we're changing it. So I think sort of it's warts and all with these things. If you find a thing, and if it's not dangerous, obviously, we'll repeat it. So let's get sorted out, and we'll make that. So we start with some holes, which we're going to use this tool. Then we'll move on to the dimple die. So we want to make a hole for that to go through, to then use this little cutter. So in light of that, we need to centralise it to make the hole. Now I could drill the holes, but that's a lot of mucking about. We use our big Whitney punch. Now, if you remember, we talked about how these Whitney punches have a little dimple on the end of them. It's a theme in it today, dimples. Anyway, there. So that we can line this up with a little centre dot on here. So if we work our way through these, now I've copied these across from the other one, so we know, we're going to end up like, and I'm actually opposited it because I've already made one. Yeah, I mean, maybe I should be copying the other side, but anyway, it'll be fine. So what we do, we use this little automatic centre punch. We'll find our centre, and that gives us that mark. Now I know that's not the centre of that hole. This is just where I quickly marked them out off the other one, just to give myself a rough idea where they're going. Remember, we're not trying to be too precise, are we? We're trying to be about right, but we don't have to be, go mad, because we're trying to get a little imperfection back into it, as it were. Which I know, seems a bit counterintuitive, but that's the way, that's the way it is. Let's build some of these imperfections in. As I say, it puts the humanity back into it. And God knows we need a bit of humanity in the world at the moment, don't we? So there we go. There we are. So then I'll follow through this just to make them a bit deeper, so that they'll pick up on them easier when I use my Whitney punch. That's a little bit lightweight, that. It's great for sort of aluminium stuff, and but it is a little bit. It's not that powerful. Right, there you go. So in with the Whitney. So what do we say? We pick up on that dimple, don't we? So we get that, and we get that to centralise on it. You see, you can sort of move it around all over the place, and then it pops in the hole, as it were, finds its place. So there we go. And again, these are brilliant tools, these Whitney punches. I mean, an absolute wonderful thing. This was a new old stock one. I was lucky to get this, as they are getting difficult to get hold of. They seem to be sort of, some of them are seem to be sort of almost counterfeit ones that you buy, and they're all flex and terrible, so having a pucker one's good. And of course I've got the little one for other jobs, but you need this because it's slightly deeper throat and it's a bit heavier. Now they actually they do sort of bench mounted ones as well, that you can just sort of pull the handle down on. I've got one of them, but unfortunately the dies are all different, and I haven't got a set of dies for it yet, but one day I'll get that set up and get some proper dies for it, bolt it to the bench, and then this would be a bit easier, you could just, anyway. Can't do that at the minute because I ain't got anything for it. Right, so there you go, that's that. Now we want to cut these, so we're going to use this one. And that goes in there like that, and then you can see this goes on here, and that will cut it. So just for the purposes of what we're doing, I'll set it up here and we'll film it going through. Then I'm going to bolt it down to the bench to do it, so we can sort of do it a bit easier. So if we look at it like that, there you go, we should see that cutting through there. See how it goes through? Wonderful tool, really. There we are, one lovely little hole. Perfect, eh? So, then we've got to take our bit out. There we are, that's what it does. So I want to do that a bit quicker, so what I'll do is I'll clamp this to the bench. Now I can work my way along it, do it a bit quicker than that, which is the best way to do it. Go. This bench is a godsend. We only made this a few weeks ago and I've been using it nearly every day. It's a wonderful thing. Very pleased with this. Of course, being on casters, we move it around. Right, there you go. So you can see it's a bit easier now like this. There we are. Now, one of the most important things with these is to keep the threads oiled. Now, I was using it, as I say earlier, so it's all plenty of oil on it, but we'll put a bit more on in a minute. There we are. But yeah, if you don't oil the threads on these, it tends to knacker them really. They get all, graunched up, and then they're ruined. So this is called a Q-Max punch. So if you need to buy them, you just Google that and you can buy them. They come in all sorts of sizes. They're quite expensive, but they're really, really good. All this stuff's brilliant, really. And I wouldn't try and make these because they'd be very difficult because there's a lot more machining than one of those, and it'd all need hardening. So technically it could be done, but choose your battles, eh? Some things are worth buying, some things are worth making. Also, it helps if you've got a longer ratchet, because then you've got a bit of leverage on it, which is, what I do. You could do them with a power tool, but that's when you do knacker threads up and so on, because you haven't got the feel you need for them. So I'd suggest doing it this way. This is a bit like the slow food movement, isn't it? This is the slow restoration movement, doing things properly with care and a bit of love. Right, one more. There we go. Right, done. So, there we are. Put a bit of oil on the threads before we put it away, just in case, you you forget to when you pick it up next time, and then at least you know it's done. Plus it won't corrode up when it's not being used. So there we are, 1 Qmax. Next we use that, but we ought to deburr these, because where that goes through, it leaves a sharp edge on it. And that burr is the sort of thing that could cause it to split. So use a little deburring tool like that. Wind this round, this will take the edge of it off. So there we go. So we'll run that round there, like that. There we are, and that's taking the burrs off, so that's good. You can feel there's no burrs on it. Mind you, if there was, it'd be too late. I'd cut myself, wouldn't I, already? But there, that's all burred up. You can see there's a sort of a bit there where it sticks up. Nasty one there. That's what we're doing it for, get rid of them. But as I say, they're sharp, nasty old things, and they can tend to split as well if you leave them on there. It's still there, that one, but let's get... Right, there we are, that's deburred. So next is to use the tool, get our little dimples done, isn't it? So, just moving this out a bit, because so that it doesn't interfere with the bench. So, what this has to do is, that bit will line up with our hole, so that'll pop in there like that. And then as it pushes down, it'll force that metal over this edge here, which will start to widen it up. Then it'll hit here and it'll push it round, you know, to flat, sort of straighten it out a bit. And then we'll end up with it just hitting on that curve, on that radius there, and it does that bit, which obviously matches that radius there. So that's what we're trying to do. Then that one locates down into there to sort of just finally centralise it. Otherwise it could be sort of slightly off. So obviously this has to have a clearance in it there. Otherwise when you push the metal around, it would, well, you wouldn't be able to, would you? Because it wouldn't be, you know, you've got to allow for the thickness of the metal. So yeah, that's what it is. So, pop that in there, like that. Put that under there, get our bolt. We want to start that. Now it pays to have that off of the ratchet for starting it. And we just put that in there, and it will centralise, and we'll start. Hold on, see, this is what I mean. I've got to move it back off the bench a bit, otherwise it hits the bench and it won't start. That's it. That's perfect. So that's it, centralised. And then there we go. Put that on there. Put our ratchet on, and we wind this down. There we see it's pushing down through. Gets a bit tough, you know, because we're pushing this metal. We're doing quite a bit with this metal, aren't we? And it toughens it up. There you go. So it's bedded down, set down through. It's all lovely, isn't it? So that's that. That's it done. So now we have to unwind it. Now the bottom comes out the die nicely because we've got a nice clearance on it, you know, which is what we want, isn't it? So that comes out there nice and easy. But that one's now stuck in there. But not for long. Give it a little tap. There you go. That's it. There's our dimple. How's that? I think that's just right. So, spot on, isn't it? So, nice little tool that, quite pleased with that. And, well, the other one's done, shan't we? Let's run through the lot and then we're done. So you remember that centralises on there, like that. Pops in there like that. then we start. Now, what are these for? Why are we doing all this? The whole point of this is to strengthen it up. You know, that's what this is for. It will strengthen this bit of steel, and you know, we got the benefit of adding a bit of lightness by the fact that we've taken a bit of metal out. So we're adding lightness, but we're adding an awful lot of strength. And the strength comes partly from the hole, but also by it being swaged through like that, having its dimple in it. So that stiffens this up dramatically, puts a lot of strength into it. Now, what I say about putting a bit of oil on it, let's make sure we have plenty of oil on it. Don't want to wreck it, do I? I've only just made it. Now, use a nice hammer like that, not one like that, because you'll wreck it, won't you, keeping it with that. So use a nice soft hammer. And having put all that effort into it, I don't want to bugger it up straight away, do I? I'd like to see this have a few years of use out of it. I expect I'll be doing a few more of these at some point, won't I? And it wouldn't surprise me if all the, you know, if all the sort of other Maseratis of the era, you know, would have, you know, this treatment in them, and it'll be exactly the same tool, won't it? You know, so it probably is used throughout the range, really. You know, so if you're restoring a classic era Maserati, and you ain't using this dimple die or one like this, you ain't doing it right, are you? It's not going to be quite the same. You know, this is sort of a bit like an artist and their brush strokes, isn't it? You know, this is all the way they did things. You know, you can see how, you know, it's all part of it. And now these cars cost as much as art. They should be restored with the same sort of input, shouldn't they? You should be thinking about what you do, not just tearing in and mucking about with it and letting in wonky panels that don't fit properly or things that aren't quite right. You know, it's that thing they say, older restoration, isn't it? That means it wasn't done, you know, with the hindsight of what we now know, of doing things better, with better reproduction panels if you were using them, or creating new panels if you have to. Yeah, it's turned a corner a bit, this restoration stuff. You know, Miles Collier out in Florida is sort of championing this cause, isn't he, of how to restore things properly. He's just released a new book, which I haven't got yet, but I will do. But it sort of deals with this type of thing, of how to do stuff, no, not about this, how to fabricate things, but about the concept of how you should approach the restoration of these pucker old cars, you know, and how they should be done, you know, correctly, and a lot about conservation, actually, which is something I'm you know, all for, is preserving what you've got. You know, sometimes you know, this sort of rust in the seals, if it's a well preserved car and it's still got a bit of this in it, it doesn't matter. You know, if you look after it, it'll take years to rot away. You know, and sometimes the joy of these sort of heavily patinated old cars with original paint on them, sometimes it's better to leave them well alone, you know, and you know, restore a different one, you know, and keep that sort of joy of the past in it. You know, it's that sort of romance of a ruin, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? You see these things, these beautiful old houses, don't you? And they're, you know, in the castles and stuff like that. And, you know, you get someone come along and they buy it because it looks so romantic, this old thing. And then they make it look like some, you know, crappy old mock Tudor manor, don't they? By over restoring it. And the same thing happens with cars. You know, get the wrong people get hold of them, put all these, you know, poor repro parts on them and, you know, make them all shiny and just, oh really? You know, leave it alone, the poor old thing. But this one was a bit past that, as we know. You know, there's preservation and it's preserving sort of some of the wrong stuff. There you go. How's that? So we've got to do a few folds on it and then we're there. So yeah, I reckon that's all right. I reckon that's worth the effort to make that. As I say, if you want your little dimples done, you know, I've got the Maserati dimple die. Right, let's think about the next bit. Right, in the box and pan, as I say, one day I'll get a straight folder, because this is a little bit, I'm still not happy with this, the way it's a little wonky, but there you go. It will have its uses, but one day I'll buy a really nice straight folder to complement it. But for now it'll be all right. Let's get that in there. Okay. Right. Alright, let's take a guess at what we want there. Now, we're going to fold these bits as well as those bits. We only want the fold there, we don't want it there. But trying to muck about and not fold that bit's not worth the bother. So we'll just fold it and then we'll straighten it. That's the best thing to do in situations like this, because you can dress it out. If you're capable of doing all this, you're capable of stressing out a fold that you didn't want. You're making it look like it's never there, so it's not a problem. It'll be fine. So don't sweat about things like that. There we go. Now I'm going to fold that up. That's going to be that's going to end up 90 to that edge, if you see what I mean, because you remember it's going on that still's folded up like that. So we're not going 90 or 90 degrees there. We're going 90 degrees here with that bit. So that edge needs to end up 90 to that one. I think you know what I'm trying to say. Up we go. Oop, there you go. So that's a bit past, if anything, isn't it? We went a bit too quick. But yeah, so that edge there is supposed to be a 90 with that, but I think that's about right. All right, we can finesse that a bit with hammer and dolly if we need to. Shouldn't have made such a big thing about it, should I? Saying I like to do it like that. Right. Okay. That'll do that. So what we've got to do is, yes, so that'll end up sort of, it fits on the car like that, doesn't it? So that's going to end up there, so we might have to flatten that up. We'll check it on the car in a minute. We've got to dress these down, then we've got to do those returns, haven't we? So let's pop next door and do them. And then we've got to fold these, but we use on the smaller folder. So, we want to dress them out, but also we want to check these, you know, these edges, don't we? So that's, you know, so we'll leave that in for a minute just whilst we offer it up. So that edge goes on there. Obviously this is for the other side, and that joins on there, doesn't it? So it actually doesn't look too bad at that, does it? That's where it's got to sit. So I don't think we'll muck around with that too much. We'll get our returns done, and these can be finessed later on, can't they, to get them just right. But that'll do for the minute. So let's get these done. So we've got to flatten those bits out. So find a suitable thing to work with, little chop of metal. I think this come out of old Ted Hawkins' yard in Sevenoaks. I think there's my mate Nick got me that. Or it might be something I picked up. I used to go down there lunch times when I worked at the jewellery shop. Used to come back with more junk from the scrapyard than I used to take down there. There we are. Right, I say jewellery shop, it wasn't a shop, it was a works, it was a workshop. It wasn't like a sort of high street shop. Let's get a bigger hammer. When I say bigger, I mean with with a, you know, larger surface area, if we're going to use engineering speak. Right, okay, let's do the rest of them folds now. So we can do these in the little folder, those returns, then we've got to do that one over that way. But we won't be able to get that in the folder because of these. But so we'll probably do them manually in a minute. So right, off to the little folder. Now, can we get that in there? Just about, just about. As we fold that up, it will mess this edge up, but as I say, we'll just straighten that up with a hammer and dolly afterwards. The main thing is to get the good crease in it, and then we can sort these little dings out later. That's the thing, you know. You don't fret too much about that sort of stuff because we can get the rest out. You know, we can dress all that out later on. We don't have to be too fine with this. You know, soon sort that sort of stuff out. And we can get, you know, a bit more, we can gain a bit more with a hammer and dolly if we need to. We'll soon sort all that out. So the thing is not to get too stressed about these things. You can manoeuvre it around again afterwards. You know, if you put a crease in something or a fold in something where you don't, you know, I'm not saying, you know, where you don't want it, but sometimes that happens when you're doing it. So that's that. So we'll straighten them out, neaten them up a little bit. And then we, yeah, neaten those up. And then we've got to fold these over. And then we should have what we want, I reckon. I mean, there's going to be a little bit of mucking about with these. What I've noticed is when I've looked at the car, each side is different, and where they put these folds are slightly different. And, you know, it's a little bit, you know, not rough. That's not the right word, is it? It's got a bit of human frailty in it. There we are, a bit of humanity. So we've got to just tap this over a bit first, you know, and then we can flip it up the other way and finish it off. See, like that. See how sort of crooked that looks at the moment, doesn't it? It looks horrible, doesn't it? See, all wrinkled up. Well, if we just get this right, it will look fine. There we go. I'll get a little bit better than that. There we are. So, that's that. What we've got to do now is get that up that way and that one up that way. Now we can't get it in the folder because of the nature of it. Yeah, we could have done that in the folder, then done these, you know, mugged about. We probably could have found a way, but anyway, it's not the way I want to do it. This will be fine. We'll do it like this. So you get that about where we want it. There's these little tongs. You won't get that any further up there because of the nature of it. But we can finish that off by hand in a minute. There we are. That's that one up. Do the same with this. because we've got these at the ends, it will naturally end up, you know, sort of folding there how we want it. It will sort of follow it, as it were. So that's that. And there we are. That's our sill. But we want to sharpen these up a bit. You see they're sort of a bit curled over. I'd like to get them a bit sharper. So we'll have to put it on here. Now, remember what I said about when you're using something like this, not to have too many divots in it, otherwise you end up with them dents transferring into your work. Well, you will a bit, but it doesn't matter too much. This is steel, we'll put up with it. But certainly if you were doing, you know, something that was alley, you'd have to be very careful, otherwise you'd end up with just loads and loads of dents in it. Yeah, it'd be horrible. So you have to be a little bit more careful with that. So what we've got that end. I haven't got two of those. So I want to prop this up, get it level. So I'll use a sandbag this end. So, you know, you use these sandbags for all sorts of things, not just sort of beating metal into. You use it for holding it when you're doing other jobs as well. Or, you know, holding something down, weighing something down when you're heating, you know, when you're beating it, all sorts of things. So if I just give myself that and clamp that on there, that'll just hold it a bit better, won't it, when we do that. So, we are. Now we want to sharpen that up a bit, didn't we? So we wanted to sharpen that fold up a little. Let's pull that over a bit. Now we want to do this end. More the same, really, isn't it? Right, there's another one of them done. So, let's put that over there. We'll pop that on it. And let's see what we got. So, that's that one. And that's that one. Right, hold on, we've just got to straighten that up, haven't we? Got a little bit there on the end, what's sorting out. Right, well that's what we got. It should be sort of opposites of each other. Bit of a twist in that. Let's do that. There we are. Now they'll probably need a little bit of tweaking about when we fit them on the actual car. You know, we might need to do a bit more to them. That's the sort of nature of this. I've sort of noticed on this that it seems to almost roll over a bit, this, as it gets to the end here. It doesn't seem to be sort of quite parallel, but they're a weird way they're constructed. We'll have a look more of that when I actually do it. They're a little bit unconventional. It's a Maserati after all, isn't it? And there's those that would say I'm a little bit unconventional, but there we are. Yeah. Right, that's them. That's what we were working on, wasn't it? Replacing that. And I'd say, yeah, I'd say that's good, isn't it? Yeah, just a little thing, quick little job there. As I say, just really to buoy yourself up, isn't it? You know, making that, making this thing and it being successful really was something that really helped, you know, helped me feel good about things and happy about the whole lot. And as I say, once these are in, the idea is to do this that, you know, when someone comes back to it at a later date and for whatever reason has to get in there, it doesn't look like, oh, you know, what's gone on in here? What's all this horrible stuff? You know, they look at it and think, oh, you know, this is remarkable good condition. You know, it's still all factory. But you know and I know, I did it. And you know and I know that I made that to make it. So yeah, there we are. As I say, I'm not trying to fool people. I'm sort of joking about that. It's not about fooling people. It's about doing it to a standard that's good enough. And, you know, not buggering them up or certainly not over-restoring them, you know. As I say, if we'd done this too clinical and used the wrong side swage on it, well, it would be a bit weird, wouldn't it? And then, you know, someone getting into it and be like, well, is this right? Or is it, you know, why has this got slightly different sort of dimples in it and so on? Whereas this way, they won't, you know, they won't know. You know, give that, you know, 50 years, a lot of corrosion in it again, you know, you never know, it might have corroded up again, you know. Someone's back in there. They'll have to do it, you know, they won't be thinking, oh, you know, it's wrong. They'll be just looking at what I did and saying, oh, you know, he must have done them and just eyeballed them because they're not quite symmetrical. Anyway, enough of that silliness. I think that'll do for today. So, yeah, let's pray for a bit more humanity in the world and that, you know, that we're not starting the darkest of days, eh? But, yeah, you know, I think it'll be all right. You know, humanity always conquers, doesn't it? And you know, look at history. It's come right in the end, but yeah, we have to go through it sometimes, don't we, before it does. Anyway, that's enough of that. I'll sign off until next time.